thank you everyone for joining us here today. Very excited to be on the call with you all and talk a little bit about the LAVAN Impact Investor Fellowship. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Avi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LAVAN. I've been doing LAVAN for a couple of years now. Previously worked in another impact investing outfit called Boundless Impact Investing, originally from Israel, and I've been in New York for 4 years now. David, Jonah, you want to tell the group a little bit about yourselves and how you came to be a part of the fellowship program?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. This is Jonah. Nice to meet everyone. So David, Avi, and I have been thinking about this for a little while. For me personally, this is kind of my journey. I'll just tell quickly. I found myself getting older, getting a job, having less time, having children, and having even less time, and finding that I really missed being able to do directly impactful work in the world, and wanted to figure out how I could use the resources that I have, the more money and the more experience and the more connections that I've been building to make a positive impact in the world. And I realized that I actually don't have any idea how to be an impact investor, how to find the right startups that are doing the good work, how to evaluate them for what their impact actually is, and how to do any sorts of due diligence, et cetera, et cetera. I've been inspired by the Jewish values of Tikkun Olam and participated in the ROI community and along those lines, and wanted to kind of try to tie it all together. So David, Avi, and I have been working together on trying to figure out how to put that together under the guidance of some experienced impact investors, and both learning the basics, but then also learning through doing. So I'm very excited to participate and work with you all to build this little community that we're building here of like-minded folk and learn together, and then make a difference in the world.
Thanks, Jonah. David, you with us? David? All right, we seem to have lost David, so why don't we continue for now, and hopefully he'll be back with us in just a minute. Let me continue running through the fellowship and some of the details about the fellowship. So when we worked to design this fellowship, we really had three main goals in mind, or two goals and a vision. The first goal is to train the next generation of Jewish leadership in impact investing. And what I mean by that is to form a cohort of individuals, starting with this fellowship and going forward with future fellowships, who can influence how we as Jewish individuals and as a Jewish community manage our individual assets and our communal assets. And you look at Jewish foundations and federations, you're talking about a group that you're talking about roughly $75 billion that are under management just in federations and Jewish private foundations. And us as individuals who think about where our capital is and how to align our capital with our values, I think impact investing presents a very powerful opportunity to have some serious conversations about what it means to live meaningful and intentional lives through our capital, and how Judaism as a religion and as a tradition can help us think about living intentional lives. So one is really about training Jewish leadership in impact investing. Two is the element of a community. As Jonah said, I find myself always looking for communities, looking to belong to communities, whether it's ROI or other communities, who share my values and where I can meet people who are aligned with my values. And the fellowship is an opportunity to do that and to join that type of community. And three is the vision, right? The vision of forming local LAVAN communities all over the world and forming a network of investors and people who want to think about where their capital is. And imagine a world in which the largest network of impact investors comes together and says, we want to align our capital with our values, and we want to think about what Judaism has to say about where our capital means and how our capital influences the world. And that's really where I'd like to see LAVAN within 5 to 10 years. So what are we doing with the fellowship? So the fellowship has three main components. You saw this on the website, but I'll run through them really quickly. The first is an intensive educational curriculum. What does it mean to be an impact investor? And that curriculum starts very broad and focuses in on early stage investing. And I'm going to say more about that in just a minute. The second part of the fellowship is investing, hands-on learning investment opportunities. And what we're going to do in this second part is we're going to bring in seasoned impact investors, people that have a track record in social impact investing, to walk the participants through different investments that they are making, walking through the due diligence, how they source the deal, how they're thinking about the impact and measuring the impact, and really the good and the bad. And the idea here is that alongside the learning, we really want people to be able to get some hands-on experience, and that will happen through the investment opportunities. And then the third component is the learning community. A part of what we want to do here is facilitate a dialogue amongst peers on what it means to be a intentional and impactful investor, and what is our responsibility, and to bring people together around this topic and around this issue. So we think a lot about in designing the program, building this community and bringing people together, and creating a place for dialogue around aligning capital with values. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the curriculum because I know there's a lot of questions about that, and I want to talk about what we're actually going to be teaching. So in total, we're looking at 8 sessions. Each session will cover 2 topics, and you see the topics right now on your screens. I'll run through them really quickly. Session 1 talks about the promise of impact investing, so why this topic is even so important and what the sort of potential impact and vision of this field is. Topic 2 talks about defining your values. So what does it mean to you to align your capital with your values, and how we can use the Jewish tradition to enrich that conversation and to draw lessons about being thoughtful and living intentional lives with our investing. Session 2 covers Finance 201, so basic financial or advanced financial literacy, capital markets, modern portfolio theory, everything obviously in a nutshell, but making sure we're all in the same line in terms of our understanding of the financial world. The impact investing landscape is our second topic for that session. People mean very different things when they say impact investing. Impact investing is a very wide field, and we want to make sure we're all talking about the same things. That all fits under the category of what you'll see here, the inspirational part of the content. Then we get into early stage impact investing. So we'll cover startups and how startups are really working to make a difference in the issues that we care about. Angel investing, what it is, why people do it, what's the potential risk and return, and where and if it should be in your portfolio. Deal sourcing, how do you think about developing a portfolio and looking at different types of deals and fitting them in a way that makes sense to you and matches your competitive advantage. Developing an impact strategy. If you care about a certain issue, how do you think about filling your portfolio with companies that are both diverse in terms of the risk, but also are tackling an issue that you care about. That covers the early stage impact investing part of the curriculum, and then we jump into due diligence. So we'll talk about different types of business models and teams and issues that are really relevant across companies. We'll talk about markets and competition. We'll talk about impact due diligence, so how to look at a company not only from the financial standpoint, but really to ensure that the social and environmental mission is aligned with the business model and that there will be continuity of impact even upon an exit or some sort of liquidity event. Term sheets and valuations, these are terms that we hear a lot in the impact investing world and are crucial to know if you're going to make early stage impact investments. So what do those term sheets actually look like, and how to evaluate a company, even if it doesn't have a revenue, right? And then at the end, we'll talk about post-investment board seats, engagement with the companies after the investment process, and we'll cover a summary of the curriculum, and we'll talk about next steps going into the investment phase of the program. I'm going to stop there. No, I won't stop there. Let me say one more thing, and then I'll let Jonah and David jump in here. who are we looking for this program? Who is this program really intended for? So we're looking for young professionals that want to belong to this type of Jewish community. I'd say the main thing that brings us together is dialogue and conversation around what it means to align your capital with your value, and a real commitment in terms of our own personal assets. We're looking for people who want to really be investors themselves, learn from top thinkers and leaders in this field, and like I said, ready to align their capital with their values. We are not looking for a specific professional background. You don't have to know anything about impact investing to join. You don't have to know anything about startups to join, but we are looking for people who have what to contribute to the companies. One of the things we know about angel investors is that they bring a lot more than capital to the companies they invest in. They bring their network and their experience and their knowledge, and we'd really like to make sure that we have people who can contribute to the companies. What are we asking fellows to commit to? And I know this has been a question we got often from many participants, or many candidates, I should say. So the educational sessions will be held bi-weekly in New York. You can also participate online. By bi-weekly, I mean every 2 weeks. The timing will most likely be Mondays from 6:30 to 9 p.m. I only say most likely because we do have some flexibility here with the fellows we ultimately allow into the program. But that's the time frame that we're looking at. It will be an evening, New York City time, and we encourage people to participate from definitely all over the U.S. and anywhere else which time zones are compatible. We know this is not ideal for people in Israel, for example, and it's a compromise that we've decided that we have to make. Anyone participating in the program has to pay a participation fee of $300. The cost of the program itself is obviously a lot more expensive, and it's being subsidized by generous donors. But we do ask for a participation fee, a commitment fee of $300. And then finally, anyone who participates who will commit to investing $10,000 in impact investments in the learning opportunities that we bring to the network. I'll just explain how that works. We're not starting a fund. We're not pooling the capital. Everyone maintains autonomy over their investment decisions. Having said that, we will need to have at least some consensus and raise a certain amount of money to be able to make an investment. So probably around $50,000 or something along those lines in order to move forward with any given investment. We're not putting this capital, we're not taking this capital away. So if for whatever reason throughout the program you feel that there are no good companies and that nothing meets the standards, we're not going to force anyone to invest. But it is important to us that the fellows understand that this is an expectation. And if you don't meet this expectation, then this probably isn't the right program. And we're happy to talk about other alternatives. This program is designed for people who want to invest their own capital. Let me stop there and opening it up to Jonah and David first for comments, and then we'll take questions. David, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Sorry about that with the, I was on my phone before. I just wanted to introduce myself. Sorry about that from before. I came to this from the perspective of having worked with a lot of social impact startups and a lot of folks in the angel and investment community who are interested in social impact. And oftentimes the challenge is that there's not a strong enough community. And I found that startups that have a social mission to start sometimes get swayed towards goals around revenue and forget about their social mission. And it's the same on the investor community. And I feel like the core problem there is that there's really not a strong enough people coming together who are talking about all the technical components of investing that can bring together and cultivate a sense of what does it mean to be a social impact investor and what does it mean to be involved in social impact investing in the sense of facilitating relationships both on the actual venture side and from the investor community. And so my passion on this is to really create this community that is grounded in Jewish values that presents an opportunity to get people thinking about this, not so much as a tangent to the things that they're otherwise working on, but rather as the core focus, and really strengthen that. And so I think the one thing that I want to just echo from what you presented on Avi is that it's, I think, really important to highlight that there are some very technical parts to this. And what I'm really excited about is bringing together people to have those conversations, and bringing together some really interesting presenters that can share information on their work and what does it mean to be focused on margin and mission, and be able to do that in a really conscious way.
Nicely said. Thank you, David. Jonah, anything else to add on the program before we go into the questions?
Just one other thing. So, Avi, David, thank you for your comments. So, I also I'm super excited about the community we're building, and while this curriculum is set and being developed and focused on how to be a good investor. One of the biggest things that I, from my work with startups and from my conversations with people, and actually someone who's hopefully going to be joining the fellowship, one of the biggest things that a lot of the times investors don't really take into account, but is crucial, is what is the experience like for the startup in terms of applying for investment, pitching? What do they like to see from investors to make the relationship move smoothly and in the best way for everyone? We can know what we want to see as investors, but having a good sense of what the startup, what's important to the startup, and what they value, what they find very annoying with investors, et cetera, is going to be really interesting to learn about. And we're going to learn from some of our participants about their experience as startups and how that's impacted their ability to raise funds, et cetera.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonah. So at this point, I want to open up the floor for questions. Some of you have already written in questions, and if you haven't yet, please type them in. The first question we've gotten is, are we investing our own capital during the course? So the fellowship has three components, as I said. The first component will be the educational part, and that will be the first 4 months. It'll run from September to December, and we'll have 8 learning sessions throughout that time. In the second part, starting in January, we'll be going through the investment opportunities. We ask everyone who participates, any fellow, to commit to investing $10,000 from their own capital, from their family's capital, and that's an expectation from anyone who participates. If you can, to meet that criteria, and you still want to participate in the program, please write me. I've emailed you all, so you should have my info, and I'm going to send a follow-up. So if you register for this call, you'll receive it. If you'd like to participate and you can't meet that requirement, please send me an email, and I'd be happy to discuss with you to see if this program is still a good fit for you, or if there's an alternative that we can offer. Another question we got was about being an accredited investor. So does one have to be an accredited investor to participate in the program? The answer is no. There are some limitations around taking capital from non-accredited investors. The solution to which I won't go in depth here is to work through what's called a crowdfunding platform, an equity crowdfunding platform, that can take money from non-accredited investors. That has other limitations that we're working to figure out. But we're optimistic about the ability to do that, and you do not need to be an accredited investor to participate. However, you do need to be able to meet the investment requirement. So you don't have to be accredited, but we still expect everyone to invest the minimum amount of $10,000. Jonah, David, anything to add on those two before we take more questions?
No.
Nope, nothing to add.
Great. So we have another question. What happens if I don't like any of the investment opportunities? So we're going to do our best, Jonah and David and I and the LAVAN board, which is going to be vetting the investors that will be presenting opportunities, to bring you the best and most inspiring investment opportunities that we can find. It'll be a combination of local U.S. deals and Israeli impact entrepreneurs in different sectors, sectors like education, healthcare, poverty alleviation, environmental issues. And we'll do our best to make sure that they're investors that have a very strong track record and that are very intentional about their impact agenda and impact measurement. Having said that, there is a possibility that you won't like the deals we brought, and if that's the case, then we'll have to check ourselves, and you'll have to check yourselves, and we'll have to figure out why we went wrong. We're not going to force anyone to invest, and that's, I think, the important thing. The expectation is clear, but we're not going to force anyone to invest. We have another question here about the role of Judaism in the curriculum. Can you elaborate on Judaism's tie to the curriculum, or is it a traditional impact investing amongst a Jewish circle? Excellent question. As I went through the curriculum, you noticed that there were a couple of conversations about values. I purposely did not put sessions that are separate on the Jewish component, because the Jewish component will be woven throughout the whole fellowship. And I'll say a couple of words about that. We get asked a lot, is impact investing Jewish, right? Is that sort of the claim that we're trying to make? And I would say absolutely not, right? It's not. We're not claiming that impact investing is a Jewish practice. The role of Judaism here is to guide our conversation around what it means to align our capital with our values. What are our values? What are the things we care about? And how can we learn from the Jewish tradition on how we make financial decisions and other types of decisions in our world? So the first session is called Defining Your Values. And there will be a strong Jewish component to there, where we work with a Jewish educator to bring in and facilitate a conversation about the role of values in our lives, and how we can use the Jewish corpus and the Jewish tradition to enrich that conversation. We'll be doing that throughout the fellowship. So we'll be having those types of sessions and those types of conversations and learnings within every session we do. The curriculum is still an investing curriculum, and it's not, we're not trying to tell you what Judaism has to say about investing. What we're trying to do is ask the question, what does Judaism have to say about how we live more meaningful and intentional lives? Jonah and David, I'd like to hear your perspectives on that question, if I may.
I would agree. This is Jonah. I think that for me anyway, and I think everyone approaches this from a slightly different perspective, but for me, I think that the Jewish aspect of the fellowship is not in any way secondary, but pervasive throughout the course and not a separate topic. So it's not like this is what this rabbi thought about, investing or something like that. It's more like what are the, when you break it down, what is the core of. It's more about impact, right? Like what does Judaism say about impact and taking care of each other and the world, and how we can do that and inform our lessons by those teachings and that tradition. And I find a lot of depth of value in that as it connects me to my community and to you all, and to the work that we do both individually and collectively.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that, this is David, is that at least for me, to think about what my role in Judaism is in the community and thinking about what community means to me. And so, I'm very involved in my local community, but in the work that I do with startups and the work that I do in social impact and with investors, to link that into my Jewish identity is something that I think is frequently lost on this, though I don't think it needs to be. And that's where I think there's a real opportunity to strengthen that tie, to recognize that that component can be, as Avi said, can be anchored in Judaism, though it doesn't need to be. And so to be able to highlight that, to be able to foster that, kind of bridges that and allows me to bring that part of my life into that professional component. And I think that's a real strength, and one that can, again, as I was saying earlier, foster that impact community and bring people together around how it's rooted in Jewish values that people might not have thought of.
Excellent. Thank you, David. I have another question here about how we see this community growing, especially for fellows who are participating remotely. So we're very much aware of the challenge, right, of creating community when you have people participating remotely. And we thought long and hard about how to structure this to make it meaningful. I'll say it's something we're very cognizant of. And that's why we ask that even though the sessions will be recorded, anyone who participates in at least most of the sessions live and using a video camera so we can have you in the room. We will be holding a launch event in September, and we're hoping that a number of you, even the fellows who are participating remotely, will hopefully join us here in New York for the launch event. The way I see this fellowship moving forward in the next sort of generation of this fellowship is local communities in different places. And if you ask how I see this growing and how that meets the needs of remote fellows, I'd love to see fellows take this on and lead local fellowships and build local LAVAN communities within their community. So we have, like I said, networks of LAVAN investors, of value-aligned investors around the globe who can lead their local chapters and talk to each other and collaborate and share deal flow, etc. David, Joan, anything to add on the remote aspect or the community growing aspect?
I'll say this is David. I mean, I'm based down in New Orleans, and so I very much understand the idea of what is it. You know, how do you participate in something when you are remote? And you know, Avi, you're in New York, and Jonah is in Philadelphia. So I would say that on that answer, the three of us have been putting this together remotely so far. So I think there's something to be said about creating these communities. And I think when you're thinking about impact, you know, it's very difficult to exclusively focus on your community unless you're in a large hub. But you know, much of the conversation, much of the dialogue in the investing community, impact investing community, involves communities that are outside of your own, involves investors that are outside of your own community. So I think bridging that and thinking about it in terms of a virtual community has greater impact and can scale, right? Because we can bring more people in, we can connect to more communities, learn about new things that are happening. And one of the things that I have a lot of passion about is, you know, there are lots of really interesting things happening all over the world and all over the United States in impact investing, and to be connected to those and to be thinking about how we can learn about what's happening there and apply it to where you are, I think is really powerful. And so we can all be champions within our own community for the work that we're passionate about, but bring that back to the group.
Yeah, I would agree. This is Jonah. Just one last thing. I think that the community aspect of this fellowship is really one of the most important parts. So for those people that are remote, and I think everyone's in a sense remote, we're all going to be doing our own little worlds, is figuring out together how we stay a community and be as effective as possible as a community and as efficient as possible, and don't kind of leave anyone out. So we'll welcome your feedback and input and initiative on that as well.
You know, and I'll just add one more note, one more thing on that note, and that is this is the first time we're doing this. And, you know, I want to be very open about that. We appreciate you taking a chance on us, and we're very open to your feedback and your ideas before, after, during the fellowship. So if there are things you want to see in the fellowship that you feel that are missing, tell us. If there are elements that you'd like to see or components that you think we could do differently, let us know. We're very open to learning and incorporating your feedback into this iterative process. Two more questions.
Wait, hang on 1 second. Just on that, before that goes any further, I would just like to emphasize that while the fellowship is new, the investing philosophy and the investors that are guiding us through what we should be investing in, they are not new to this. They are very, very experienced. So I just want to make sure that that's clear to everyone.
Yeah. For sure. And in case it wasn't clear, the different components of the curriculum that I showed will be taught by experienced investors in this field. So we're not making any of this up for the first time. We're just bringing it together in a way that's new. Thanks for clarifying, Jonah. What is the ideal group size and why? We're looking at 25 fellows. It's a number that we chose because we thought it would be both manageable and also in terms of the capital commitment, it would give us access to a number of different deals. So we wanted to make sure that we had enough people that we could potentially bring a number of deals and make meaningful investments. And there's some minimums to how much you need to put in to get on the cap table. So that was part of the reasoning. And part of it was what was a group that was large enough to be meaningful and have meaningful conversations, but not too large to be unmanageable and distant. So that was some of the considerations around that. Why are we not creating a fund? Why are we not pulling the capital to create a fund? I'd say there are two reasons. For me and David and Joan, a few of others. One is because I think in general, if you look at what's happening in the finance world, there are less funds and more direct opportunities, and you see more and more investors that want to be active and want to look at deals and want to see where their capital is going. So I think it's mimicking a trend that's happening in the investing world in general. But I think the more important factor is I want to make sure that people have to make a decision. I think the learning component, a lot of the learning is going to happen in the second part of the fellowship, where people have to look at deals and make their own decisions. And I think having to make your own decision is actually a really important part and will encourage a deeper learning. So we want people to make their own decisions and sort of maintain that autonomy.
And also, I would say that being distanced from your own capital creates, not just that you have to make the decision, but being distant from it also doesn't provide you an understanding of where that capital is going. It gives it somebody else to make that decision and to be actively involved in the decision making. But to be more conscious of it, I think, is not just the trend where investing is going, but I think it encourages you to be a stronger impact investor. So obviously in the future, if folks decide that they want to contribute to a fund that has that mission, I think that's a wonderful thing. But I think ultimately the goal of this is to create and foster a community of people who are actively engaged in impact investing.
Good point, David. Thank you. I see two more questions here. What types of companies, size, industry, tech, non-tech, will we be investing in, and will they be woven in or throughout? So I'll start with the second question. There'll be we're going to do the investment opportunities after we're finished with the curriculum. So the curriculum will have case studies, which will not be live investments. There'll be companies we look at for learning purposes. And then in the second part once we're done with the educational curriculum, which will go from September to December, in beginning of 2018, we'll start with the learning investment opportunities, where we bring in investors to present deals. I don't have a strict timeline for that in terms of Mondays at 6 or another time, because it will depend very much on the opportunities. As many of you know, startup investing can be erratic or sort of very opportunity-based, so hard to say exactly when we'll have the deals. But the idea is to do it in relatively close succession and bring in a number of opportunities starting early 2018. What types of deals are we going to be bringing? So it'll be deals that are in the pre-seed, seed, and probably below round A sizes. So this will all be early stage companies, the types of companies that angels traditionally invest in, and that those amounts have grown over the years. But I'd say roughly we're talking about companies raising between $500,000 and $2 to $3 million. Again, very roughly. The industries that LAVAN has worked with in the past have been a lot around education, technology, healthcare, poverty alleviation, environmental things. So really anything we feel that fits into the impact category and that we can measure the social and environmental impact of. And we're open to guidance from the group on this. I think it's part of what's going to come in our conversations is what are the things that we really care about, and we'll do our best to source companies accordingly. Tech, non-tech, hopefully a little bit of both. I'll say realistically, most of the deals that angels invest in these days are tech. They don't have to be, and I'd like to see more expertise in non-tech things because I think that's fascinating. We have one more question here around timeline. So application deadline for the fellowship is in 9 days. It's July 20th, and then within a couple of weeks, you'll have answers on the exact who's accepted into the fellowship and who's not. And by the middle of August, we'll be asking for a commitment if you're interested in participating in the program or not. So once again, deadline for applying is July 20th. If you have further questions or anything of that sort you want to discuss, please do so before then and leave yourself enough time to fill in the application. It's not particularly long, but it does take a couple of minutes. David and Jonah, I don't see any other questions at the moment. Anything to add on the things we previously discussed?
I think that this is Jonah. I think you did a great job summarizing, Avi. I think that we're excited to kind of learn with you guys, learn with everyone, and kind of work through this. And we're focused on being pretty responsive to feedback and trying to make changes as we go to make sure this works for everyone. I think obviously it's always challenging when people are in different time zones, et cetera. But we're hoping that we can make it work. We have experience with some other webinar organization that, and we're trying to adopt some of the best practices. So we'd love your thoughts even by email now beforehand if you have ideas for how to make this great. I mean, if you're going to be part of this and you're invested in it, in more ways than one, we really want you to be satisfied and happy with it. So any ideas you have coming up, and we'll do the best we can to accommodate.
Thanks, Jonah. David, closing thoughts?
The only thing I want to say is that I'm really excited about this. I'm glad that there are folks that are also excited and are here on the phone call and are interested. To echo Jonah and Avi's point, please let us know not only about thoughts on the program, but also if folks have thoughts on people who might fit into any of the curriculum topics that Avi highlighted. So we're excited to bring together some really interesting people to share information and share their story on those. But if you are aware of case studies that might apply or specific ventures that have kind of targeted that area and you think highlight that, please send that along. We've had some conversations with folks who are interested in the fellowship. And one of the things that I'm personally very excited about is what everybody brings to the table, the relationships that people have, the experiences that people have. And so we don't want that to be background information. We want everybody to kind of be contributing what they know and who they know and all the really great things that they've learned together so we can grow. Because I think the most amazing thing about this will be not just what we talk about, but who you will interact with.
Thank you, David and Jonah. Great points. I'll wrap it up by saying, one, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to see so many of you on this call. And just generally, it's been fantastic to see the general interest and excitement around this. We all, I think I take it for granted that it makes sense to align your capital with your values. And it's inspiring to see other people who feel the same way and who are willing to make the time to really learn and discuss and understand what that means for them and how to implement that in our daily lives. So one, thank you for joining us. Two, if you have ideas, recommendations, or questions, I will send a follow-up email with the presentation. Please feel free to reach out to me directly. And the last thing I'll say is if you're interested in taking this fellowship and bringing it to your community, if you'd like to run a LAVAN Fellowship within your local federation or synagogue or just a group of your peers, that's also something I'd love to hear about. So please feel free to reach out as well. Like I said, our vision for this is local communities of investors all around the globe that come together to discuss how their Jewish values influence their investment decisions, and how we can make the world a better place using our capital. So we'd love to have you a part of that vision. And thank you for joining us today. Bye now.